So, a criticism I hear from someone who I don't think makes very good arguments, or that the criticisms are valid very often, or good questions per se, to be totally honest. But something I was never taught or told to believe a certain way or to defend, or I never heard anybody defending it any particular way. I know I've read about it. People do defend the date of 1844 on October 22, right? And I've read the arguments, and it seems like, so from a totally trying to step back from not being critical or defensive, just from a neutral point of view, I don't believe you can prove for certain the exact day, the Day of Atonement on the Jewish calendar I don't think you can date the festivals perfectly to how they were doing it in Jesus' time and before, necessarily. I don't think it can be proven, like documentedly proven, because of not having enough data on this. Some people may want to argue otherwise if someone has a lot of data on it. I've looked at a lot of data. But I've seen some of the arguments that people make to correlate the October 22 with modern scholarship, some of the modern scholarship on these issues. And that's my conclusion at this time. So here's what I don't think matters. The prediction, obviously, of the Millerites was a bad prediction. The interpretive method that led to 1844 is correct. In other words, the day for a year means the year matters more than anything. But if Jesus fulfilled the Jewish calendar, the sacrificial system and the priesthood and the temple services, then God if Jesus put an end to the sacrifice and oblation and the old covenant, and we're not to keep the feasts, let's put it this way: keeping the feasts is not a sin against God after the new covenant comes, which I believe is correct. Not to criticize or approve of the necessity of keeping the feasts, or to say it's necessarily bad, but just to say it's not required. That is, if you don't, it's not a sin to not keep them, because Jesus fulfilled them, because he's the sacrifice, right? So the Jewish calendar then wouldn't be active according to God after the new covenant. So the day of October 22 doesn't actually matter. It's the year that matters. So we're talking about long sweeping periods of time. So no one told me why I should or shouldn't defend any particular day. To me, it seems irrelevant. So that's the question. Why or why not is that irrelevant? The year is what really matters, but even the year isn't even that important, because it just tells us what time period we're in, the time of the end, and we're at the close of history. It would be the idea. But we don't keep the Jewish calendar. It was a geographically specific thing that doesn't seem to have a worldwide application, like the, say, weekly Sabbath established before sin. Obviously, that's in the Ten Commandments. Now, so why do we feel like we would need to defend the exact dating of the day? Doesn't it? It seems to me only the year really matters, if anything matters about that at all. So please do respond if you disagree or agree, particularly Adventists who believe or who understand Daniel's prophecy was talking about 2,300 years, because it certainly does. And it's consistent and it's accurate, and it puts the focus on the ministry of Christ and God's plan of salvation from the very beginning, which was taught to the people in the first covenant through the sacrificial and earthly Levitical system, the earthly temple system, which we're pointing to Christ. Our view is consistent in the symbolic interpretation. It puts a focus on Jesus. It upholds the Protestant view and the understanding of how Paul uses the language from Daniel and applies it into the new covenant period, even into the return of Jesus in 2 Thessalonians 2. And recognizing how, like the Protestants did, and most of Christianity in the recent history, the last 500 years, that actually studied the Bible, can see the obvious correlations between Daniel 7 and Revelation 13. Dispensationalism has gone way off track from God's work through the Protestant Reformation, in my opinion. Unfortunately, I still appreciate a lot of these people, these Christians that have these sorts of views for various reasons, but not for their eschatology, because it is certainly incorrect. We have the truth regarding prophecy. It's consistent, and it upholds what the movement that God was doing according to prophecy from Daniel. It doesn't have these huge gaps. So, but I just don't think October 22 is that big of a deal. Not because I doubt it. I actually kind of find the arguments compelling that I've read in the Darcom series or in different scholarly posts and articles. But I objectively speaking, I don't think you can demonstrate, we accept, say Ellen White's blessing on it or something, and that God was in the movement. But I don't think dates have to necessarily be correct. I don't think that would falsify the Adventist view anyway. I tend to think it is correct, but I don't think it's provable. But why should we think we need to defend that so profusely anyway, since we interpret days for years and we believe the Jewish calendar, according to the monthly cycles from Jerusalem, are no longer active from the first century on? It's kind of weird to think you need to get the day accurate. I think that was just an overly obsession with the era of the Millerite movement, and they're predicting Jesus would return. Anyways, love to hear your different thoughts on that.